Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by M.A. Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode. What a lovely cat.
Thank you. Cats and Zoom, you know.
They have to have their attention.
She's an Abyssinian.
Ah.
And they're very social cats. So, you know, I'm talking and she hears another voice in her head. Time to get involved.
Yes, exactly. Although, where are the other pets going to come from? So, let me set my timer so we don't go over, because I will go over.
Okay.
I have a tendency to talk way too much and not pay attention to the clock at all. So, you are Linda Kay Hardie. And I saw a post from you at the Short Fiction Mystery Society on the email list. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to interview her on Thursday. And so that connection was nice, because usually the names at the bottom of the emails I have no connection to. And I just think, oh, I don't know who that is, but they said something really smart.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you.
Well, I wrote my very first story at the age of 4.
Ah.
Because they taught me to read early. Back when I was a kid, there was no preschool and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Maybe you got sent to kindergarten, but at kindergarten you did playtime, coloring, nap time, and that's about it. But I was so annoying. My mom sent me to kindergarten early because she was dealing with my baby brother. Mm-hmm. And the teacher, when I wouldn't lay down for naps, I was always asking questions. Why is the sky blue? What does that say? Teacher finally said, okay, here's the alphabet. Here's a book. At least sit on your pallet and be quiet for nap time. Right. And so I've been reading and writing for a very long time. Mm-hmm. More than half a century. Doesn't that sound awful? Way more. So anyway, I've been writing a long time and reading a long time, and just in the last few years, I decided to try publishing again, and found that I've got a knack for short stories, especially when crimes are involved.
I have difficulty coming up with crimes. I will think of the situation, I will think of the setting, I know my characters, and I know who I want to kill. What foul deed I want, but then working out all the things that are related to it are so difficult for me. It will take me about 2 weeks of constantly thinking, what can I do? You know, how am I going to kill this person? Why am I going to kill this person?
Oh, well, see, those last 2 questions are very easy for me, because I think pretty much all the murder victims in my stories are, well, let's say I don't want to go to jail, don't want to go to prison for life. And so the victims and how they're going to die and why they're going to die, these are things that, you know, maybe I've been thinking of for a long time. Mm-hmm. And, you know, of course, the names are changed to protect the innocent, which is like me. But yeah, that's the part that comes easy to me, is figuring out who's going to die, why, and how. Because sometimes in life, there are people that you sit there and you think, okay, if I could get away with it, how would I remove that person from this circumstance? You know, and some of us have dark minds.
I thought I had a dark mind, but apparently I don't, because coming up with the murders, and sometimes I go like, oh, that's too gory. I can't do that one.
I'm having a difficulty right now because I've been invited to write a novella for a cozy mystery collection. And the dark part of my brain is saying, okay, let's do this awful gross stuff. And then my editor said, hey, Dark Linda, listen to humorous Linda, listen to wordplay Linda, put some of that in instead. So we've decided, me and the other parts of my brain have decided to commit murder on the English language instead of on people and stuff. I mean, there'll be some murders in this because it is a mystery, but they'll be off screen. On screen, tons. Wordplay, really bad dad jokes. I think my father invented dad jokes because I'm that old.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I do think I need to cultivate the cozier part of my brain because it does get a little dark inside here sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine. I wrote a story last summer, and the tagline was basically about beware the vengeance of this kind of person. And then when I actually did the murder and realized that my main character was going to get vengeance for the murder that had been committed, I thought, oh, I walked myself into this, and I'm not sure I want to do this after all. But I did complete the story, but it is probably the darkest of all the short stories that I have written.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the whole, that anthology that actually should call it a collection because they're all my short stories. Those are all very dark stories for me. And so luckily it was summertime and I had the sun that could warm me up and get rid of the coldness in my heart because you really have to turn yourself cold to get that kind of thing out of your system. Talk to me about your writing process and how you use technology in that writing process.
I've been using technology since the beginning. When I was in high school, when all my friends were taking the AP English classes and stuff in high school, I was taking typing. And everybody looked down their nose at me and they were like, oh, you're one of those. I thought you were a college person, but you're just one of those secretary people. You know, that sort of
Yes.
nastiness. Anyway, I mean, because that's that classism. Anyway, I did go to college and I was planning to, but I knew I was going to be a writer. So I had to know how to type.
Right.
I learned to pound away on my grandmother's old manual typewriter.
And you had to pound away on those keys. Yes, you
bang,
did.
bang. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get really strong fingers. And
yes.
that's why I have arthritis now. Anyway, so I did that for many years. And then when computers started coming out, personal computers started coming out, at that time I was married to an engineer. And he was really excited about technology. Right. So we had the very first computer, which is about the size of today's cell phone. Yes. And it did very little. I mean, you could make a little video where a stick figure walked across the screen.
Right.
And play Pong, which is ping pong with two very slow moving paddles and a very slow moving ball. Anyway, that wasn't any good for anything except playing. But when word processors started coming out, I had a Commodore 64. I think that's the one that had Quick Brown Fox as the word processor. And boy, I've forgotten all the different systems we had because, him being a geek engineer, which is one of the good things about him. There weren't enough good things about him, which is why he figures in, oh, never mind. Anyway, he's been in a story or two, and we'll leave it at that. Hi. So anyway, all sorts of technology, and some of the first ones were in DOS, where it's all like typewriter, what was it, like green letters on a black screen,
Yes.
and for one of them, I think Quick Brown Fox had brown letters on a golden screen, and just because that was new, and they thought, "Ooh, let's make it pretty," and boy, did it hurt your eyes. And
Yeah.
weird, weird key combinations to do
Yes.
anything, and
Hmm.
yeah, and he could do very little. I mean, it
Yes.
was little more than a typewriter, an electronic typewriter, because I don't think the first ones even had like italics and bolding, unless you did some really weird coding. You had to,
Right.
you had to actually put in the coding to do those things, and so it was easier just to underline like we did with typewriters, and then just would progress through all of these different systems, and when we got to personal computers, as it's very similar to what they are today, except just giant and slow.
Yes.
Found Word Perfect, the word processor that's now owned by Corel, and I am so glad that I missed out on the fork in the road that led everybody to Microsoft Word, because Word Perfect is so intuitive, and it must have been created by someone who writes,
Right.
because there's so many things you can do with it easily that writers need, and desktop publishers, because I've done that.
Hmm.
And like one big feature of Word Perfect is the reveal codes. You just click on a little icon and it shows you all the hidden codes in there.
Hmm.
And if I bring a document in from Word, I do the reveal codes, and there's just like this much, half a page of hidden codes, and they'll mess you up. And
Yeah.
anybody that writes on Word knows how you suddenly go, wait a minute, where'd those italics come from? How come I can't get rid of them?
Yeah. Yeah. Word can be very awful sometimes, but usually it works really well for me. Uh, but
Good.
then I've grown up with Word.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can remember the very early days moving from DOS to Word and thinking, oh, this is really nice. And then thinking that 3.1, Microsoft Word 3.1 was a
yeah,
genius program. And uh,
yeah,
so those early days, very early days. Um,
yeah. And right now I have Word Perfect. It's probably about time to upgrade, but I've got Word Perfect, and then I've got Apache Open Office. That's what I've got as my Word equivalent,
right.
because I found that Word Perfect and Word do not get along. They
Yeah.
claim, well, at least they claim that they can translate, but they butt heads like a couple of rams in heat. And I find if I take a Word Perfect document, copy and paste it into Open Office text documents, and then work on it, finish working on it there, then save it as Word, whatever the newest version is that my Open Office has, save it as a doc.
Right.
Then it's usually very, very close to being compatible. It's like compatible 99.5% of the time. Once in a while, an editor will say, "Hey, we got this weird thing going on here," and then I'll shoot them a different version
Right.
and make that stop. But mostly, it's pretty compatible. But yeah, I refuse to use Word any more than I absolutely have to. Like when I worked at the university, the computers there had Word, and okay. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've noodled around a lot in a lot of different things for for technology.
I when I was still in my regular career, early days, 90s, um, for the business aspect, I had a PC, but
Uh-huh. Oh,
for another aspect of what I had to do, I had a Macintosh, and so that was very hard to convert back and forth, back and forth. But I will say the genius thing was when you no longer had to put a little floppy drive in and then
Mm-hmm.
take it out. You put a floppy in to run the program, and then you take it out in order to save to another document. And then you
Uh-huh.
have to go in and out and in and out. So what we have now is genius compared to that. And if you think about it, we have refined the technology a good bit, but what they came up with in the early 80s, we haven't really advanced beyond that.
There haven't been any like sea changes.
Right, exactly.
Because going from nothing to any computer, wow, and then going
Right,
from the early DOS to a Windows, wow, and
right.
then from then on, it's like, okay, yeah, okay. Um, yeah, I've never gotten into Apple, so actually, I have to admit, I don't much care for them because
Mm.
the feeling is mutual. They don't care for me. One gig I had, whenever, a million years ago, um, we're talking little Macintoshes with you put the disc in, and if the disc wouldn't come out, you'd take a paper clip, unfold it, and poke it in
Yeah,
a little hole, and then the
yeah,
disc would. That's the technology I'm talking about. So I was working for I was the publication specialist for the public information office for Fresno City College.
right.
And I put out the weekly staff and student newsletter. I was responsible for reporting and writing most of it.
Mhm.
And then I don't remember what day of the week, let's say it was Thursday. Every Thursday, I would get all the stories onto a disc and then take it to the print shop at the university, and they would put it all together, lay it out on the computer, and then they would do their magic and print out a zillion copies of it, and then we would distribute it.
Right.
So this one Thursday, and Thursday by 5 is when I had to have the disc ready with all the stories on it. And so it's so due by 5, I guess it was like 3:30, maybe getting close to 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and I'm working on our cover story. And
Mm.
this was it was in the like mid 80s, because the cover story was about AIDS treatment and dealing with AIDS and stuff on campus with the health center. Really
Right.
important back then, and
Yeah.
pretty big news. And so I'm working on this story, and I get almost to the end, and then the little hourglass of death came on.
I remember that.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm going, no, you can't do this. You can't. And I'm hitting the buttons trying to save. And finally, blue screen of death. Oh no, oh no. So paperclip, pop the thing out, reset the computer, put the disk back in, open up the file, and there was nothing there. It was just,
Oh,
and the title of the file was there, and maybe my headline, but the rest of it was gone.
right.
And I had like at this point like 45 minutes to rewrite this story, this groundbreaking story,
Yes.
which is also where I learned to go, oh, let's hit save, let's hit save, let's hit save.
Constantly.
As well as the computer is set to save like every 5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
Anyway, the moral of this story though is that adrenaline will do great stuff for you, because I won a statewide award, first place feature story. Should have brought the plaque out here to show you. First place feature story for that article in the state of California for community colleges.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
big. That's big.
but I've never forgotten the apples for it, and that was just the beginning of them revealing their feelings for me. Yeah, when I have to use an Apple phone, like when I'm working as an elections manager, we now have Apple phones, so it simplifies so many things in the
Yeah.
and pulls. But beginning of the day, I'll get out the phone and I'll say, "Who here's an Apple person? I don't know how to turn this on." As a matter of fact, in one election last year, I accidentally butt dial texted 911.
Oh no.
And I didn't find it out because the ringer was turned off. So I'm carrying this around in my pocket, and I finally take it out and I think, why is 911 texting me? What's going on? Yeah. So that's me and Apple. We don't get along. Mostly I will say to my assistant manager, "Hey, are you an Apple person? Good, you can have it."
And give them the responsibility of that. Well, we have gone into the vagaries of and the horrors of technology, and I really wanted to hear about your writing process.
Okay. Yeah. Something I found not kind of recently. I really started writing stories for real back in 2019. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I realized that the best way of writing the stories is to free write because my subconscious is a lot smarter than me and she puts things together. So when I come up with an idea, like if I'm frustrated with somebody, like there's a certain relative, female relative that I need to put a story in. I need to put in a story. Anyway, so I'll sit down and I'll say, okay, so this is about, and I'm not going to say her name just in case. And I start typing and just stream of consciousness, just whatever comes into my brain. And because I took typing, there's no barrier between the brain and the keyboard. Fingers know where everything is. When I'm texting, it's like,
one finger at a time.
my brain doesn't know where the keys are. My fingers do.
Yeah.
But my fingers know when it's one of them. Anyway, so I just brainstorm, free write, brainstorm. I said, okay, how do I want to kill? Let's call her June. So how do I want to kill June? I'm just so tired of June and all the ways she does this and that and that. And I've never killed a character like this. And what if I did this and what? And just what ifs and I really hate and I like and just going off on all sorts of tangents. And all of a sudden I will realize, oh, wait a minute. I think I'm onto something here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I usually do this in my journal, which is like a writing journal, diary, memory dump. It's a catch-all. And so when I hit that point though in my journal of, I got some, I stop. And I've already been hitting save, 800 times. But then I copy all of the stuff I just wrote, open a new doc, paste it all in, and name it Killing June or something like that.
Right.
And then I start really putting the ideas together.
Yeah.
And with the short stories, especially the murder stories, I usually know where I'm going. And so, and sometimes I start with a beginning. Sometimes I know, oh, this is how it starts. Mostly I'm a pantser, but I do figure a lot of the stuff out with the brainstorming. And that's my usual process with short stories. I'm struggling a bit to start the novella that I was invited to do because that's a longer thing. I have written an unpublished novel and 2.5 unpublished middle grade novels.
Mm-hmm.
So I've written long before, but anyway.
It's a different mindset.
It's a mindset. Yeah, it's a mindset, and I'm still trying to figure it out because everybody says, all my friends say, my writing friends, how do you do it? How do you write short stories? When I start, suddenly I'm 100 pages into it. And I'm slowly coming to see that one of the things I'm doing is in a novel, you're kind of exploring the human condition. And so you have a lot of depth of character, and you have a lot of time to really explore what what means what and how humans work. In a short story, it's a slice of life that
Right.
gives a kind of a photograph of the human condition rather than a big treatise on the human condition. And you still have to have a character arc and a story arc. You just have to squeeze them down and prune a lot of stuff. Except because of my journalism training, I usually start things out with a skeleton and then flesh it out.
Right.
Whereas the majority of writers I know start out with this big old huge bush and they have to prune it away until it looks like something good. I start out with the bare bones and I have to add all the leaves. Oh, and there's a bird and there's a squirrel. Oh, what's the squirrel going to eat? And oh, there's a bobcat to eat the squirrel and stuff like that. And so that's kind of calling it process is kind because it's very disordered. But it works for me because my brain's going all the time. And
sometimes I think writing is more like meandering down back roads in a very rural county, because it's not a straightforward process for me.
mm-hmm.
And I will think I'm being straightforward, and then I'll hit a block. And I love your shirt, by the way.
Oh, yes.
But I'll hit a block and I can't figure out what it is. And it takes me a little bit to figure out, oh, I left out this whole meander over here with a character that I needed to bring in and give his voice and that kind of thing. It was hard for me to start writing short stories. I started with novels, and I wrote many novels before I tried to write my first short story. And it was 17,000 words long. And I thought, okay, I don't get short stories yet. I've got to practice. Yeah. And then the next one was like 12,000 words. And I said, you still don't have it. So it helped me to look at Lester Dent's formula, where he breaks things into like 1,500 word increments. And then you think in that aspect.
Okay.
I have nothing that I can give you though for writing a novella. To me, it's just I've got 7 points that I need to hit when I'm writing a novella, and then hopefully I've got the length that I'm looking for when I finish it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What I'm going to have to do with this is, and I just had a critique group meeting with my critique group. They're marvelous. And I asked them to help me brainstorm because I know what the title is going to be because we've got a theme for this set of novellas. And so I said, okay, here's the theme. Just throw out some ideas. Well, they threw out some good puns and they threw out some good wordplay and some ideas and tied it to a local event that happens in annually in Reno. And, it's always fun to write your stories and any kind of stories in your hometown.
Right.
Especially when you live someplace that kind of gets looked down on, Everybody thinks, oh, it's Vegas and Reno. Yeah. So I'm probably going to go that and just start writing something because I haven't done the brainstorm dump or this yet. And then I do those. I'll probably do those throughout the novella. But sometimes I'll do it a second time for a short story when I write myself in the corner and think, okay, I got in here. There must be a way out. Painting yourself in the corner and you look out and there's all this wet paint and you can't walk across it. And eventually I either break down a wall, walk through the attic.
Cut through the floor.
Once in a while, I will walk through the paint. Yeah. And leave bright red footprints everywhere. Red because that's blood. And so with the novella, I'm going to sit down and start brainstorming, and I'll probably write it like I've done my novels, which is I have a vague idea that we're going this way, and so I just pants it until all of a sudden, whoops, there's a turn.
Right.
I just keep an ear out for my subconscious to say, this way.
Right. Okay. So we are, Zoom just notified me that we are running out of time. Um, so is there anything that you want to promote? This will air in May, about the middle of May. So is there anything that you want to talk about specifically for that time or?
Well, I've got several charity anthologies that I'm associated with.
Mhm.
One is called The Perp War Pumpkin, and that's an anthology of humorous crime stories that feature a Thanksgiving food.
Right.
And it's put out by White City Press, and it benefits Second Harvest and Feed America. All the proceeds go to that.
Right.
Publishers even eating the most of the publishing costs of it,
Right.
out and stuff. And we're going to have a second volume coming up in 2025. I also was in Nature Triumphs. Oh, and that one, I always forget the name of the publisher, and that really ticks me off. So, Dark Moon Rising Publications,
Dark Moon.
Triumphs, and it benefits the Nature Conservancy, and all the stories are feel-good stories that are apocalyptic about nature winning out over humans. Mine is called Lake Tahoe's Revenge, and there are zombies in it. And
I don't think that's a feel good story.
well, it's a feel good for the planet because the humans get wiped out, but everything else.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I have a new one that's not a charity one, but it's called, and this is for adults only. It's called Sex and Violins, and it's an erotic crime anthology. There's got to be an erotic scene or two. There's got to be an instrument that is featured in an orchestra, and you can't kill off the conductor because everyone's done that already. A haunted cello, and it's a pretty weird story. I was wondering why all the other people in the anthology weren't answering my friend requests, and then I reread my story and went, oh, yeah, because there's always one weirdo, and that was me. Plus, by the time this airs, our and Sex and Violins is also from White City Press.
Right.
And then coming up really soon, probably by the time this airs, will be A Killing at the Copra. And these are stories, crime stories based on or inspired by Barry Manilow songs.
Right.
And
Cabana.
I got to
Yeah.
do one on Mandy. My story was one of his biggest hits, and
Yeah.
and it kind of scared me where it went.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I didn't expect any of it. When Jay accepted it, he just raved about it. Said that was like my deepest story ever, and I thought, oh dear.
He sees
And
some things that maybe you didn't want to show.
since then, I thought, okay, if that's what it takes, let's just reach in parts of my soul and throw them around. But anyway, that's also White City Press, by the way.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
you have an in with them. Do you have are your short stories in any magazines like Ellery Queen or Alfred Hitchcock or anything like that? Or
I
yeah,
haven't made it
Black Cat.
eggs yet. I every so often I get write a story that says to me, hey, this might work, and so I'll send it off to Ellery Queen, comes back, send it off to Alfred Hitchcock, and then just wait for a year and a half, and then it
Yes.
comes back. And so I haven't broken those yet.
Mhm.
I've been published mostly in all sorts of little small press anthologies, although I
Right.
did have a children's story, and this was historical and not horror, a children's story published in Cricket magazine, which is a huge thing in the children's publishing world.
Right.
That's
right.
my biggest one so far.
Yeah.
And I did get a children's picture book published a few years ago, but that was also a small press, and they've since gone under.
Which is a shame.
Yes. Lovely book.
Yeah. I think a lot of it had to do with the demise of the independent bookstore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That really hurt the publishing industry.
Interesting thing, we've got a growing number of indie bookstores in Reno right now.
Yeah.
We've got I think we've got 4 of them now.
Right.
Plus our Barnes and Noble that seems to be doing well.
Mm-hmm.
I should have just said chain store. They don't need the publicity.
Well, I'm perfectly happy because I enjoy going in there and just looking around and things, but it's very hard to find. The store is so large that it's very hard to find a book that you want to read in the amount of time that you have devoted to being in there. Whereas with smaller bookstores, you could go to your area and you could scan the shelves, and then you could wander around and you would see something that would strike your eye. Or the owner knew enough about you and your taste and enough about what they had in stock that they could direct you to certain things.
Yeah, we lost an indie bookstore, Sundance Books, that was here forever when the owners just got too old to really do it, couldn't find any buyers, and so they retired the store. But that was the sort of place you would walk in and say, and to any of the clerks, you'd say, hey, I'm looking for this sort of thing, and I want a easy read, I want a hard read, and they'd say, try this. And you'd go home and go, ooh.
Right.
And
sometimes you found a new author that you wanted to go back and read everything they had that you could find.
Yep.
Yeah.
I find that sort of thing now, though, on social media, on Facebook, in groups and stuff.
Right.
Because there's a lot of good author stuff going on social media, and people promoting their books, and some of them are just awful because they're self-published without any editorial input.
Right.
And other self-published ones or indie ones are marvelous because it's talented people and they use the resources, the editors, and help people and stuff. They use their writers that they don't know how to lay out a cover or anything. And so they pay for it from other small artists.
Yeah. Which is a sad note to end, a sad note and a happy note to end this interview on, because we are, according to my clock, we've got 1 minute, 20 seconds left. So it was lovely talking to you, Linda.
Great talking to you too.
Okay. And thank you so much for agreeing to this interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Renee Black and Edie Rooms. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.